Hey guys, it's Sam, and it's already time for some recent reads. So these are the books that I read partially, like part of March, most of April, honestly. I'm not doing like exactly monthly wrap-ups these days. I'm doing like, well, when I kind of hit enough books, but it's still usually on a monthly cadence. I just can't commit to being like, I'm doing these at the beginning of the month all the time. The first book in this series of books was Persepolis Rising by James S. A. Corey. This is the seventh. I think there's 9 total books in the series, and this is like the third to last book. But this is the 7th book in the series. This is taking place after, I believe it's like a 20-year time jump, if not more, in the series. And so there's like this first part of the series, and then like that the first 6 books, and then the last 3 are all taking place like decades later, following mostly the same characters and like people you've met before. But this is a gigantic space opera series that many of you are probably familiar with. I am also currently watching the TV show, which I will say it's nice to have the foundation of the books. I do think the show is better. I am on we just started season 3. But I like what the show does with the book material. But this is a space opera following primarily this team on this one ship who, at the very beginning of the series, their just ice hauler ship gets involved in this like interplanetary conflict and gets blown up, and they're the only survivors, and because of that they get pulled into like all of the drama happening between Earth, Mars, and the Belt primarily. Those are like the 3 major political forces, and different political things happening there. But it's also kind of like Game of Thronesy in a way, because like you have all the political machinations, and then you have like there's something big and bad and alien out in the world, and it's gonna come eventually, and it like peeks its head in sometimes and like is involved in the story. So yeah, so this is way further in the series. I can't talk about it much, but I will say that like I think overall, like I like this series as like a whole. Sometimes the individual books I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And like I'm getting a little exhausted by all of the interplanetary stuff. I hoped when I started this series that there would be more of the alien weirdness than there is. So yeah, I like it, and there's parts of it that I don't. And like I'm very attached to the characters now because I've been with them for so long and I'm watching the show, and so there's like definitely feelings with some of these characters. But yeah, I think 3 to 4 out of 5 stars. It's kind of hard to rate these individually at this point. Then I read A Witch's Guide to Magical Inkeeping by Sangu Mandana. I'm not sure if this is currently out yet. I'm filming this very late, and so I'm just not gonna look it up. I get that that's lazy, but I just need to get this video filmed. Anyway, I got an arc of this. Ugh, loved this. So this is a sort of like companion-y, but not even, because it's not like there's like a ton of crossover, for her first book, which is The Secret Society of Irregular Witches. And she's doing these like cozy contemporary like witchy fantasies that are so delightful. And so this is following a woman who was sort of like a prodigy. This is over in like the UK, and she was kind of a prodigy witch and was part of this like establishment and was like being trained by like these very like high to do people, and was just like had this immense amount of power. And then this happens at the very beginning of the story. As a teen, she brings her like great aunt basically back from the dead. And then like loses all of her magic. But before that happened, her aunt like runs this like magical inn, and she had created this like spell unintentionally. She was just so powerful that like she didn't really know what she was doing. Unintentionally created this spell over the inn that like only people who are supposed to be there will be there, and like no harm will come to it, and people will only be able to find it if like they're good people, and like all this stuff. And that spell has like stayed sustaining since she's kind of like lost her magic. It's not entirely gone, but she has like a trickle now. And so this is just like the story of her now as an adult, kind of being like, who am this identity that I have as a witch, and I'm not really a witch, but I want to get my power back. She's been trying to get her power back this whole time, and there is a witch trapped in a fox's body that is one of the characters, and then this kind of like curmudgeon-y, very like actually I think they say that he's autistic, or at least he's like autistic coded. Like his sister is definitely autistic. He comes to stay with them because he worked at the library at this like guild, and there's a teacher there that kind of like wants to help her, but he comes to stay for like academic reasons, and that's where the romance is. But yeah, this was delightful. Anyway, I'm not like, it's one of those things with cozy fantasies, with some of these cozy stories, you almost have to like explain a ton of the different components to like tell you what the plot is, because it's not being motivated by like this big thing. It's very like, slice of life, her getting her power back or not or whatever. But I really liked this. I found it very cozy. There's a number of like, it just follows some of the beats of there's this inn, and it's so cozy, and the like, the houses has some sentience to it, and everyone's a found family, and there's some queerness to it. There's some like people of various ages and stuff, all like in this found family living together, and different like quirky personalities, and like very, very found family. Like the inn only brings people in who need it. So yeah, this was very sweet. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I think there was things at the like end of like how it was sort of like wrapped up and like solved kind of, that felt a little bit too like rushy in some ways, and I think a lot of cozy stories kind of struggle with that. But overall, like very solid romance. I was very much pulling for them and kind of like kicking my feet about them, and like solid story, and I really enjoyed it. And I really like this series that she's doing of these like cozy witchy stories. So for a while I didn't really enjoy contemporary romances that were bringing in these like witchy elements. Now there's a few authors that are doing that well, and she's one of them. Then I read Threads That Bind by Kika Hatzopoulou, Greek name. And this is like a YA fantasy mystery, a little bit upper YA, I would say, because these kids are like fairly independent, and a little bit older teens. But this is taking place where there's a lot of like Greek mythology magic. So the main character has like sort of a magic that ties to like the fates and the thread weavers, right? And so she has the ability to like cut people's threads, cut people's fate, and she's kind of seen as like a little bit like dangerous and stuff. But she also has 2 sisters, because like the people that have these kinds of magic are always born in 3, because of like the weavers were always 3 and whatever. But she has been working sort of like as like a sort of detective and things, and gets pulled into this plot line of there being people who like don't have threads, who are then like killing people. But it's obvious that they're being used as puppets for someone else. And so like she's having to investigate and talk to, different like sort of seers. And it's not even like it's just Greek. I said Greek, and Greek is the main one, but then there's also mythologies that like, and magic that are kind of mixed in. And so instead of it being like based on like the big gods that we tend to see with a lot of mythology things, it's like these like lesser characters, or like more minor background characters that you see in a lot of mythology that you don't tend to see magic based on, because you see magic based on like the Greek gods a lot. This is more of like, I think there's some kind of like Medusa type characters, like harpies, in the Hades game, it's Mega the Furies. Oh my god, like that kind of thing. So it's these other like parts of Greek mythology and different mythologies that are mixed in. So there's different people that do magic in those different capacities and things that are part of the story as well. So this was cool. I would say it was like 3 stars, like solid. There's parts about it that I've already kind of like started to forget. Listen to it on audio, pretty decent, like an interesting mystery story. Sort of, it reminded me of another series, and now I can't really think of what it was. But I think the like using something like mythology that we've seen before, like we've seen magic based on Greek mythology and different mythologies, but this being like not necessarily based on the gods in the way that we tend to see it, I think was something cool and unique. And yeah, I enjoyed it. And she also has this like this known like fated lover kind of thing, that she's like doing this like, oh my gosh, like I don't necessarily want to like, I don't want to be pulled along by fate, but this person is also supposed to be someone that I'm supposed to be with according to like the fates and all that. So like there's that sort of like YA romance element to it as well. But I thought that was done like pretty well. So yeah, like 3 out of 4 stars. I think it's a duology. I'm going to finish this series. Then I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. And really, what is there to say that hasn't been said at this point? We did do a live show discussion for House Up Book Club for this, so that is on the screen. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's solid. I think it exists really well within the Hunger Games spectrum. The Hunger Games should still be read in publication order. You should not read this before the rest of the series. But I think there are things that, like, I think she tied a lot of things in well. I think there were some elements of it that felt a little bit like, not quite retconny, but there are things that like, that she tied in that are like, oh, it's cool that she tied that in, but it also kind of doesn't make sense with the original trilogy, because maybe you thought of some of these things, but you didn't think of them in so much detail as to what's being included now, right? So yes, do I think some beats were thought of before? Absolutely. Do I think all of the beats were thought of before? No. But I think this book like ties together a lot of different things, and I think it works really well. And I'm very excited for the movie. I think the movie's gonna be great. The Hunger Games movies are always great. Is it perfect for me? No. But is it like pretty good? Did I have a good time reading it? As good of a time as you can have with the Hunger Games book? Yeah. Did it like tie back to a lot of things in a way that was a little bit like, ugh, gut punch in the way it always is? Yes. Does it feel really relevant for right now because it's a book essentially about propaganda? Yes. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Playing Possum by Susanna Manso, I think is the name. And this is about a like animal, oh God, she says the name of like what kind of science she does. But like it's basically studying animal, like, do animals understand death, basically? Like, that's what this book is about, basically. Like, do animals understand death, and how do animals treat death and whatever? This was fairly short, but I would say is not as well written as some like nonfiction books on various topics that I've read before, because it read more like a research paper or like a thesis, and like it cited academic literature in a way that felt so much more academic than this looked like. Like, let me look at this cover. It looks like a just like standard nonfiction. So I don't think it was necessarily written in a way that is super appealing to the general public. And the parts that she wrote about like how different animals respond to death, and how they like, basically the whole thing is like, how do we prove if animals understand death, and how certain animals understand death, and these things, like, we are both in danger of anthropomorphizing animals, which is making them like ascribing human emotions to animals that they might not have, but we're also in danger of saying there's no way, there's another word for it, but I'm forgetting what it was, about saying that there's no way that animals could be having these emotions, and so that both of those things do us a disservice, and she was kind of talking about all of that and using death as the example. But yeah, this was cool because it definitely had some different like major stories that we've heard of animals doing these things, like that whale that lost her baby and carried it around her nose forever, and how different animals sort of seem to hold like funerals for their dead, and carry around their dead and seem to grieve, but is it actually grieving or is it something else? But was very academic based. So I think the way it was written is probably not great for everyone nonfiction wise, but I still think it was pretty interesting. It was pretty short, and I generally enjoyed it, like 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Gunslinger by Stephen King, the first book in the Dark Tower series. Why, you ask? Because my partner Sam loves The Calling of the Three, which is the second book in the series, and he desperately wants me to read it, and I'm going to. He got me The Gunslinger and he got me the second book, The Calling of the Three. I read this on audio because I was like, I've heard from both him and like a lot of other people that the first book is just kind of like a lot of nothing, and then you get into it. And I know this is sort of like a multiverse type series. So then this first book, you have a guy, the gunslinger, following a dude. I think it's the guy in black. Is that what? Yeah, the man in black. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. And that is the entirety of the book for the most part. So you are figuring out that like, this is existing in a world that it seems to be like a nexus, or at least interconnected in some way to a bunch of different like parallel universes and times and things. And so that's being revealed throughout this book. And this character was impacted by this man in black, and he's now like chasing him and trying to like catch up to him for things that he did. This was written in the 80s, right? Like 82 or something, by Stephen King when he was still on cocaine. And that is exceedingly obvious. This is my first King book. I know a lot about Stephen King. Stephen King is very prolific and we all know about him. But because Stephen King writes a lot of horror, not really my jam. This, you know those memes that people talk about like how men write women? I now think that like, those were based on Stephen King. The way in which every woman that he writes about in this book, again, he was deeply high the entire time he was writing this, he talks about their body parts all the time in ways that you're like, why are you bringing that up? It was very odd. I feel like those memes, sometimes I felt like such exaggerations, and now I'm like, oh, it was just Stephen King when he was violently high. All of that to say, the writing was like fine in this. The story is like intriguing enough. Like, I like this multiverse idea. Stephen King has a crassness that doesn't really vibe with me. Again, maybe once he got off the drugs, I'm going to vibe with it a little bit more. I don't know. I know a lot of people like Stephen King. Whatever. If you're watching this and you're a King fan, that's fine with me. A lot of people are. But yeah, this first book, I was just like, why did this turn into like this big phenomenon that everyone loved? I don't really get it. But we'll see as the series goes on. I'm going to read The Calling of the Three. I think I'll probably like it. But yeah, there's some things that are like some really dark, kind of like, this is definitely like a dark fantasy story. So yeah, we'll see how I feel about this as I continue on. But for Stephen King. Then I read An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. This is a dark academia fantasy in which a woman who has had kind of like a troubled past is breaking off an engagement because he found out that her fiance cheated on her. She's like kind of running away from things, which is what she tends to do, and she gets a phone call from this university that she never applied to saying that you've been accepted and you need to come take this role on. And something kind of like also magical happens where it's almost like her inner self is talking to her and is saying like, you need to accept this. And so she goes to this university and learns the art of persuasion, which is essentially like mind control, kind of like, it's another word for magic, but it's also like altering people's perceptions, potentially making them do things. And she just gets pulled into this school. I think this is a response to a lot of dark academia books that are very white, right? And this school has featuring mostly BIPOC people. This is a Black woman, that's our main character. And so it was sort of like a response to that, but that also is showing the ways in which they get still pulled into some of the same like power systems and things. And yeah, there's a very tumultuous kind of toxic relationship that's like developing between her and like her advisor, because you know, they kind of find out that like, oh, like there's something about how she does this magic that's a little bit different, and like they need her for something related to the school, and it's very like unclear what, and yeah, so it's a bunch of like classic dark academia of people being toxic and doing toxic things. But I ended up enjoying this. I thought it was pretty solid. It's like there was parts of it that were just like, you know, the very classic, again, dark academia of like bad people being bad people. And there were some things about the magic and things that didn't feel quite as fleshed out. So I think I gave this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, it was fun to have a dark academia that didn't feel just like quite so white classicists kind of like doing stuff. So yeah, very like a different spin on that. So if you liked like the Atlas 6, for example, I think you would probably be into this. And then finally, I read For the Throne by Hannah Witten. This is the second book in the Wilderwood series, the first book being For the Wolf. It is following two sisters who, you know, the firstborn is for the throne, the secondborn is for the wolf. And so in our first book, we primarily follow Red, who is being, they live in this area that's surrounded by this woods that's like kind of contaminated, corrupted, whatever. And the second daughters get kind of sacrificed to the wolf, but the wolf is actually a man. And there are things that she finds out about the forest and keeping the forest in check and the way that she might be tied to magic and things like that. The second book is following her sister. The first book also has snippets from her sister's perspective, who's desperately trying to get Red back. And so is falling into like kind of like a corrupted magic, corrupted religion kind of side of things. And so in this book, we're following her story. So I can't quite say what goes on, but we're following like they're sort of mirrors to each other and things. And so like that's kind of what this whole duology is about. And so we're following the sister story, and we still get stuff from Red as well in the second book. But overall, I really like this duology. It is like there's some enemies to lovers things that go on in like both books, but like in a nice slow burn effective way. I like the magic. There's like some very dark, like it's all dark corrupted forest magic in some way, which is great. And yeah, and like the religion stuff is really cool. There's these like corrupted gods and things, old gods and things too that have to be like taken out. So yeah, it's like very much appeals to me. If you like dark corrupted forest stuff, you'd probably like this. I gave this like 4 to 4.5 stars. I think there were some parts of the story. This one also has a perspective of another character that I felt like wasn't quite necessary. Like I get why it was added, but I felt like that did take away from the story, and so that bumped it down from a 5. I think the first book I gave a 5 stars. This one's like a 4.25 to a 4.5. But still overall really like the series, and I'm going to continue to read Hannah Witten stuff because I think she does dark creepy forest stuff in a way that I really like. So yeah, those were all of the books that I have read recently. Comment down below, let me know how your reading has been going recently. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.